Hey, what's going on? We're taking a look at Chapter 14, The Elite is Born. Oh, no. Wrong. Sorry. Bloodstained Sneaker by Nick. Um, oh, cool. Yes, make sure you use the leaf blower that you've been using for the past hour and a fucking half. Anyway, um, the beginning they talk about Kenny Omega and how they've tried to stay in touch with him, but reconnecting with him as the new person possibly in the Bullet Club. Ooh, I like the way the light comes off my face. Lighting is important. Ooh, look at me. I'm looking sexy. How Kenny, his popularity really launched in DDT, but then he really crossed over in Japan, and now he was going to be in New Japan. It's interesting. This reminds me of, there used to be a convention about wrestling in Japan that I don't think really applies anymore, and maybe hasn't applied in the last 10 years, and it's this. It used to be if you worked for a company, you were married to that company, and switching over to another one didn't happen unless you were a top-level star and they were bidding for you for the most part. And that's the way it is in Japan. People don't really realize that if you like work for Kentucky Fried Chicken, you work for them for like decades. Like that's your life. It's really hard because in America we just see jobs as sort of transitional. If you looked at the amount of different companies and stuff that people have worked for, I've worked for, it's amazing how much it changes. But in Japan it tended to be a permanent thing, but obviously that wasn't the case nearly as much anymore. So I love this part where Nick talks about he, meaning Kenny Omega, along with some of his sometimes tag partner, sometimes foe, Kota Ibushi, had a one-on-one match that sold out the Nippon Budokan Hall in Chiyoda, Tokyo, which seats more than 14,000 people. In Japan, Kenny was royalty. So when they were together for that month, they didn't leave each other's side, and Kenny really showed them Japan, so they really got to experience it, which I think is really cool. So, and this is the birth of the idea of elite, right? Okay, there are good wrestlers and there are great wrestlers, Kenny said, but this list can only have the elite wrestlers. To Kenny, the word elite meant the absolute best of the best. That indicated you were special and had a God-given talent unlike anyone else in your field. So this is the birth and planting the seed of this idea of being elite. All elite wrestling, being the elite, etc., etc., etc. During the tour, whenever a wrestler had a good match was mentioned, whenever a wrestler or a good match was mentioned, we'd question the value. Okay, that was great, we'd say, but was it elite? Soon elite became a part of our everyday lingo. After a delicious meal, we would sit back and loosen our belts. Now that meal was elite, we'd say, laughing out loud. We'd go out into the frigid cold and mumble, this weather is not elite. It was our inside joke. Super cool. Then they talk about, why was the Bullet Club shirt thing so hot? And New Japan opened up its own shop on Pro Wrestling Tees. So now it was going everywhere. So you're really getting to see, the last chapter was about the Bucks really spreading their wings and beginning to make it. Now they're getting paid good money. New Japan wanted them all the time. And how they were adjusting to that. And now it was about things just taking off. And how independent wrestlers were now making it big everywhere. Like in the WWE, you had CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, etc., etc., etc. WWE started to look elsewhere to streamline scouting talent, because at one point, it seemed like they only got like professional athletes of some kind or college athletes, and now they were beginning to realize, oh, there's some guys in the indies tearing it up and really making a name for themselves, so we can capitalize on it. The billion-dollar wrestling company WWE promised independent wrestlers guaranteed salaries and opportunities to become global stars. So even the most unlikely wrestlers could become global stars, right? So in 2013, one of the faces of independent wrestling, Rami El Generico, signed with WWE. Remy practically invented doing it yourself, and independent wrestling ran through his blood, so nobody ever pictured him going to the big corporate entity. So it just goes to show, and then Kevin Steen goes over and becomes Kevin Owens. Don't get too attached. Wrestlers come and go. He had to remind himself. Nick did. And it's so true, right? Everybody's trying to make a living. Everybody's trying to make it work. So the Bloodstained Sneaker title comes from, they did a match with Joey Ryan. I guess they had a bit of a feud going with them. Joey Ryan and his female tag team partner is Candice LeRae. And so in it, he put on, Matt super glued several thumbtacks onto the bottom of an old Nike high top sneaker and hid it underneath the ring. So he put on this weapon of a shoe and super kicked her on the top of the head. So she had a welt and blood and all this kind of stuff. Kevin Steen, who has been involved in extremely violent matches, said this is too much while commentating the match. Kevin rarely broke character, but he did here. Candice would eventually overcome the odds and slam Matt onto a pile of thumbtacks, pinning him in the middle of the ring. The explosion of the crowd when referee Rick Knox counted the 3. And by the way, the fact that they listed the referee here, classy move, really great, Bucks. I see you. Was so loud and emotional that I realized we had done something special. What's more, the impact of the match was felt all over the world. Pictures of the gory scene spread online everywhere, with the best-selling t-shirt of her bloody face arrived on her PWT page just a couple of days later. So it was controversial. People were debating it. People were arguing about it. A year later, they did an insane wrestling league show, and I remember this when they did the double super kick to the 9-year-old and did this kind of fun spot, and people were really mad about it. But man, there was no doubt they really had it going on, and it was cool that they pointed these things out, because then you flash back if you're someone like me and remember, like, yeah, I remember when everybody was talking about that and debating about it, what my opinion of it was back then, how it's changed now, all of that kind of stuff. We were making the most money we'd ever made in wrestling, and we couldn't keep enough merchandise on our gimmick tables or in Matt's apartment. We had made our choice. We were going to be the unafraid loudmouths who did and said whatever we wanted and worry about what came next later down the road. They also took great pleasure in making their own money, right? And he goes into how that felt and how satisfying that was. To come up with an idea, see it play out, see it sell out at the merch table, and that was your money. And I totally get it. You know, people think, because I captained my own ship and I did it so successfully and did it so wonderfully and trained guys, and those guys ended up working for me, and then I worked with all different kinds of people as a booker, that I would never be able to do it any other way. On the contrary, I kind of see a parallel with me and the Bucks, where it's like, obviously financially they had much more success than I did at an independent level, but they're obviously able to work within a context of a group now. And I always think, like, that would be a great way to use me, to help somebody else get their vision across based on what I learned when I got my vision across. In any case, I digress. My apologies. So they're going to get to wrestle Matt and Jeff, and they're doing these meet and greets, and lots of people are showing out, right? They saw Booker T, and I just love the way that they handled this. Hey, my name is Matt, and this is my brother Nick. We didn't get to say hi last time we were at a show together, Matt said, sticking out his hand to Booker T. Booker T smiled ear to ear and shook both of our hands. Man, that whole thing got out of hand. He said, I'm sorry it went down like that. Thank you for coming and saying hello. It's never too late, right? For a long time, that whole no handshake thing felt like it was ruining my life. It was good to finally put it to rest. So we're really getting to see them to mend fences, making things good. Back in Japan, Kenny Omega in New Japan held a press conference, and he's going to start full-time with New Japan. They talk about how Kenny was nervous about being part of things. He was really nervous about doing Japan, and more specifically the Bullet Club. Is it going to take, shouldn't I be feuding with them, and that kind of thing. But they ended up doing it, and of course it was great. They go into the dynamics of the Bullet Club, who was who to what, and I don't want to spoil that for you, so just read it. It's really great. You really get this thing that was so hot in the Bullet Club, and yet I would say a lot of wrestling people had no idea what it was all about. So you're really getting to read about it here. Then they talk about their life in Japan and what that was like, because they're spending so much time there. And the birth of the Vines, which would become being the Elite videos. One that really put me in time. I remember when Vine thing was hot, and sort of the birth of this stuff. And, the birth of the Meltzer Driver, which I think is really great. And it ends this way. Oh my God, I've got it. Let's call the move the 5-star driver. Rob Van Dam already does the 5-star frog splash, I replied. That's right, okay, he said. The car went silent for a few moments. Okay, what about the Meltzer driver, he yelled. That's it, I said, speeding the car forward as the dust from the freeway kicked up behind and our future shone bright ahead. And next you get the birth that the elite is born. So that's when the videos come in en masse and they're really catching steam. We're reaching the end of this book, and like I said, I feel like it's going to feel like this epic thing that has ended once it does. But it sure is fucking great. I really advise you to get this book, get a hold of it, and read it. It's really been delightful. And this whole thing about Japan culturally and all that. I've lived in Japan, if you didn't know. I'm half Japanese, so this stuff really resonated with me and rang true. It's really cool. And anyway, this was chapter 14. We'll have 15 tomorrow. And I got to do full disclosure today because it is Monday.